the Foss Waterway Seaport. Has anybody been down to the Foss Waterway Seaport before? Anybody not know what the Foss Waterway Seaport is? Sometimes people have a little confusion as to what the Seaport is. And what we are essentially is we operate 4 different functions. We are a maritime museum, we are a marine science education center, a heritage boat shop, and also a venue for events. We also offer a transient moorage. We have about 1,200 feet of linear dock for people to come and spend time on Tacoma's waterfront if they wish to come in by boat. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the events and functions that we have, a little bit about the history and where we're going with our organization. We've been undergoing a multiple phase construction project. And by the way, can everybody hear me in the back? A multi-phase construction project that's been going on for several years, and we are probably, I'd say, 60 or 70% done with it. We expect to be done probably around 2016, I think. I'm hoping we'll be done with it. So here's what the building looks like right now. It's a historic wheat warehouse building built in 1900. And so the challenge that we have is we're trying to turn the building that was not climate controlled into a museum. And it's also a historic building, so we have some limitations into what we can do as far as the construction. It's not a purpose-built museum. And just about 2.5 years ago, we were able to get the glass front put in, which is about 55 feet from the base up to the apex. And the building is about 147 feet wide and 300 feet long. And here's a little bit of information about some of the our hours and what we offer, membership information here. I'm going to have to blow through just a few of these and I have to talk at some of the other slides here. So one of our biggest events here is Maritime Fest, which is something that we don't run Maritime Fest, but we are part of Maritime Fest. Eventually, the plan is that the Foss Waterway Seaport will be the ones that will manage and operate Maritime Fest, which happens down on the waterfront once a year. This year it'll be a little bit earlier this year in July. And Maritime Fest is a waterfront celebration that's family friendly. It's free admission. There's all kinds of events for children and families to do. We have the museum open. Usually it's sponsored by a sponsorship that provides free admission for the public to come through. And it's really a fascinating event to go to, especially the Quick and Dirty Boat Building, which I'm a little partial to because I've been a participant. Has anybody heard of Quick and Dirty Boat Building? Where you have 6 hours and limited material, usually scrap plywood and whatnot, to build a boat, and then you have to do this parade and carry it down with all your other competitors, and you have to throw it in the water and then race the boat. Not all of them float, by the way. It's actually more fun to lose and sink than to win, because when you run the course in about 2 minutes, then it's over. But if you're out there halfway and you start sinking and floundering, it's quite a spectacle for the audience. We also have had hosted tall ships in Tacoma in 2005 and 2008, and we're hoping to get tall ships coming back in 2017. Some events we had was a speaker series which included the story of patrol boats on Puget Sound, and New York artist Maria Lorenz, she built boats out of driftwood and materials like that. She works at the university over in New York. And we had a fishing exhibit, so I try to bring in speakers that can talk about some of the exhibits that we have. And one of the people who had volunteered to help us with our fishing exhibit came in and talked about his vintage fishing lures. Something I had no idea is that Tacoma is a place where a lot of antique fishing lures, well, they weren't antique when they were made, but they're antique now. There is a strong sport fishing history around here, as well as commercial fishing, commercial fish building, fishing boat building around here as well. And then we also have education programs that had a water-based program where we were trying to get people to go out and paddle all the way. It's called no gas, paddle all the way. And any kind of device that would float and you could paddle on, we brought people out on the water. We're really trying to re-engage this community and connect them with the waterfront, because Tacoma does have some 46 miles of waterfront. And there's people that live, just up the hill here that never come down to the waterfront, never been on a boat. We see this in our education programs where children come down and they're just fascinated with the water, and they're fascinated that we have a program that we can take children out onto the water to do marine science, do plankton tows, do salinity testing, and then come back. So we have land-based and boat-based education program. We had a marine architect, James Cole, here came and talked about fishing boats that were built in Puget Sound. And Jim Cole is 86 years old, and he's still working part-time as a naval architect, which is pretty amazing in its own right. And then we also had a sailing event that was partnered with the Sea Scouts, where we would take people out on these small sailboats with sailing lessons. We also had a steam weekend where people brought in the Puget Sound Steam Society brought their little steamboats in and would take people out on rides, which is a very unique experience to see these boats with their little smokestacks. All about steam, or fishing. So the history here. There used to be a long series of wheat warehouses here built by the Northern Pacific Railroad. This city really wouldn't have existed or grown the way it has if this was not chosen as the terminus for the railway line. There was a consideration of Portland, a consideration of Seattle, but they ended up choosing to come to Tacoma because there were some financial decisions, because it was a little quicker to get to the water coming this route. And by choosing this as the terminus, this now became the point at which access to the entire world would be gained, because this water right here touches the water in shores in South America and Asia, and New York, everywhere else. And we have natural deep water harbors because we have this bluff here up on the hill. It's steep and it continues down here. And if anybody's been sailing out there on Puget Sound, you see those depth meters on the boats and how deep it gets so fast. This is a great place to have a harbor, and so that was another decision to make Tacoma the terminus. So the Northern Pacific built this, they called it a mile-long series of warehouses, although in reality it was more like 5/8 of a mile long. And they basically separated the city from the water, so this is all company-owned land, so you had no access, public access to the water. You came down here to work, basically. There's a postcard showing Tacoma with its signature warehouse with the monitor-style roof here. These clear-story windows right here in the buildings, and they're right here on this level, they allow just a little bit more light in, and they also would reflect on the interior beams of the building, which were painted white, which would provide the workers with an additional hour of light to work during the daytime. There was no electrical lighting in there. We do have electrical lighting in there now, fortunately. And what we want to do is build a lasting legacy to contribute to the museum district here in Tacoma. Where effectively we would be the bookends with the LeMay America's Car Museum at the south side, and we would be up here at the north side with the rest of the museum district right in between. This is what we looked like about not only 10 years ago, even 12 years ago. This building was the last remaining building of these old wheat warehouses. Through years, they would succumb to fire. They would be demolished. The weather would take its toll. A lot of times, these buildings they start to collapse because the roofs begin to leak, and then it leaks into the support structure. That rots, and then it collapses. That's what happened with the municipal dock building, which was right directly north of the 11th Street Bridge. That was torn down maybe a decade ago or so. It just wasn't repaired, the roof, and it just deteriorated everything else. What saved this building is that in the 1970s, the city of Tacoma, which owns the building, put a new roof on it. so that the police department could use it to store all the impounded vehicles that they would seize. And so it has an interesting history there as an impound lot. And then we have just recently, in the last, say, 6 years, redone the roof again. It has insulation in it. And we've also just, as of last year, redone the sides of the building. But this is what we walked into, and people thought, oh gosh, this building, this is a goner, we can't save it. And here's the interior truss, by the way. You cannot find this lumber anymore. This is old growth Douglas fir. The beams here are 95 feet across. They stretch to these uprights here, but then there's also a continuation, another 25 feet to make out the remaining width of the building. This Howe truss structure is very familiar construction to the railroad company, because this is a reverse trestle. If you look at it, it's flipped upside down, and this would be a trestle that the trains would go over. So it was construction they were familiar with. They built these buildings very fast in a period of somewhere around 4 or 5 months. So they just slapped them together, but they are very solid. Here's what the building looked like back in the heyday when they had, or should I call it the wheat day, when they had all the wheat in here. They would bring it in and they would sack it and store it. And they put the stacks about 8, I think it's 8 high or thereabouts. It's about as high as the men could reach. They were 100-pound sacks. And so imagine just being a laborer there, moving 100-pound sacks every day, all day long. And then here's an electric conveyor belt, which is a Tacoma invention that helps speed the processing of the sacks onto the ships. So we want to be a beacon to re-engage people to come over to the waterfront. Who here goes out on the water or even enjoys the waterfront of Tacoma, even just walking down Ruston Way? Good, I'm glad to see that. They're also expanding the Esplanade down here on this end. Eventually, I think it will connect with Ruston Way. But this city, because the nature of it almost being like a triangle, we've got 2 sides of our triangle are facing water. So it provides a very commanding views of Commencement Bay, especially if you're up on the north end. I've seen some 200-degree views of water from some houses up there. So some stories we want to tell. There's, of course, the Foss legacy, Foss Maritime, which was a tugboat company, which was an immigrant story of Thea Foss, who came from Norway in the late 1800s and ultimately created an empire of tugboat building. We have the Port of Tacoma here, which was formed in around 1919, I believe. It was voted on to be created as a public port versus where our buildings were owned by the Northern Pacific Railroad. Port of Tacoma was an agency under the direction of the city. And then we have another story here, the Willits brothers and their canoes. Anybody heard of a Willits canoe? Those are remarkable pieces of art and function, and there was about 900 of them built, and they have quite a cult following amongst canoe enthusiasts. And they're built here on Bay Island on the west side of town. Here's again some more of the Foss Maritime legacy. Tugboat Annie was a film that was, the inspiration of it was Thea Foss. In fact, the city that the boat comes out of is called Tacoma, or sorry, not Tacoma, Seacoma. Combination Seattle and Tacoma. Here's the Willits brothers canoes. This is a one-of-a-kind Willits launch. It's 20 feet long. They only built one, and we have it at our museum. It's awaiting restoration right now by our boat shop. There's in the Port of Tacoma, which ultimately started off as the waterfront here on this side of the water before it went to the Pike Flats. Here's the south side of our building here in an event where we have opened up. I believe this is from Tall Ships in 2008. So Science on the Sea, we have very unique education programs that I mentioned before, where the school groups come in. We'll take the children and divide them into 2 groups. There's a group that goes out to sea, and a group that stays on land and does science programs on land. And then they come back, have lunch together, and then we'll rotate back, and then the next group gets to go back to see. So this is a salinity test right here, the spectrometer, and then here is a plankton tow right here. We tell the children that they are junior scientists. They're on the science expedition that is a research vessel, not a yacht, because we don't want them to they're just going out on a cruise. And it's not a day away from school, it is school out in the field. So here's the building today. It looks a lot different than those pictures I showed you before. We have these new sides put on that mimic the original style of the construction. These large windows are built to the same dimensions of the loading docks that the railroad cars and the men would load the grain in and out of the building. I mean, this is a critical 147 feet where you connect rails to sails. And without that 147 feet, you can't get the wheat from the interior of Washington to Chile or to Japan. And here's what we do. This is high graph. Right now, at our phase of construction, a lot of our visitors are coming in because of the rental as a venue, because we haven't built out the interior of the building. That's going to start to change, where we're going to have the exhibits and programs are going to start. They're probably going to switch the percentages with the venue rentals as we build out the exhibits and build out the classrooms. But this is the nature of an organization that's in transition. And we cooperate with Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, Southtown Sports for our programming. And this is what the layout on the interior of the building looked like as far as what exhibits we had and where they were located when you walked in from the front. And some of our recent achievements. One thing that we got is the Ghirarducci Award for Building Renovation and Restoration, which is an accomplishment we're very proud of. We're also supporting Tacoma 2025, which is a shared vision of shared future of embracing Tacoma and taking it to the next level in arts and culture, recreation, education. And we want to have waterfront activities for entire communities. I'm hoping that we can have a canoe rendezvous down to us when we do the canoe journeys. I'd like to work that out. And again, here's that quick and dirty boat building. So if anybody is going to go to Maritime Fest this year, please come and check this out. It's fun to watch them working on the wood, but it's even more fun to watch them do the race. And we hope to just help add to that infrastructure in Tacoma, where as you walk along the Esplanade, we're a mile north of the Museum of Glass, and as you walk along to see some of those changes there, the Murray Morgan Bridge has now been renovated. There's a beautiful mural that's at the base of the Murray Morgan Bridge that tells the story in illustrations of the history of Tacoma. And we want to be part of that enrichment for when visitors come here. We really want people to come to Tacoma and recognize that this is a place that has tremendous history, tremendous culture, and a really bright future. And this is what we're looking at here. It's about a $27 million project to take the building from what you saw in those earlier pictures to where we are here. And we're nearly 21 million into the total contributions, which leaves us just around 6 million left to take us to the next level. The next step we're hoping is to finish our interior walls and get heat into the building. That's one thing we don't have, so we are only open for about half of the year, and so it's difficult to keep ongoing programming and engagement with the community when we're closed for half of the year because it's just too cold to be inside. But once we get heat in the building, I think it's really going to help us turn things around, and so that's where the building pushes. Hopefully construction and installation of the heat, of the HVAC unit can begin as early as this November. And here's some support that has come to create this vision. And I also wanted to leave just a few minutes to how am I doing on time?
You're fine. You got about 10 minutes.
I'll take some questions. So here's where we are in the project. So this building secured 2008. We actually had to raise the whole building 4 inches, rip out all the rotting dock, and then put in that concrete esplanade and then drop the building back onto it. We've also done some seismic upgrades using steel X-braces and beams that help support the building. So most of the building is no longer supported by its own wood structure. It's now sitting on a frame of steel that you don't really see. It blends into the walls the way that the architects have designed it, so it doesn't detract from the beauty of the building. And then we just completed this exterior wall project, and our next push is for late this year to get that HVAC system in there and run the gas. We don't have a gas line from the city that comes down to Seaport, so we're hoping to get a gas system installed there. And then finally, our building opening 2016 is really the date and the year I'm looking forward to, because then we can really move forward with getting those museum exhibits in there and putting some fundraising and some money into that to really create a comprehensive experience. You're going to have, at the minimum, about 14,000 square feet. Our building's 45,000 square feet. We'll have 14,000 square feet at least dedicated to maritime exhibits. And just as an example for size, the McCurdy Gallery up at Mohi, which is dedicated to maritime exhibits, is about 2,000 square feet. So we'll have about 7 times as much exhibit space here. So it really will provide an opportunity that anybody who's interested in maritime history can come down here and see some world-class exhibits. And again, here's the layout of the building, how we intend to build it out. There may be a few changes between now and then, as there usually are, where you would enter in here. This would be an event and reception area. This is a flexible use space. This right here in the center would be our exhibit gallery area. This room right here would be a room for special exhibits that require more stringent climate control, because the nature of our building, even with insulation in the walls, it's 55 feet up to the ceiling, and to heat up the building to specific climate control would be more difficult. It would be more difficult, but it'd be more costly too. So we want to have different climate zones, and so this would be for exhibits that require more special attention. We really are trying to take the chill out of the building during the winter time. And then we have our laboratory classrooms here, collection storage, offices right here. And this is where our Heritage Boat Shop is located currently and is operating. And if you walk down the Esplanade, even today, you'll see, if you look in the windows, you'll see our boat shops all set up and ready to go. And I think that's basically the quick and dirty, short nutshell story of the Foss Waterway Seaport. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask me, and also I'd be happy to talk with you after the meeting too if you have any additional questions. If you want to come down and take a look at the Seaport, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to give you guys a tour. If you do any group activities or outside activities, I'm happy to run a tour. Unfortunately, I don't have any business cards with me, but our website is fosswaterwayseaport.org, and you can find me on that.